All right, welcome in. Glad you're here today. Thanks for checking in. And I'm Mark,
And I'm Yana.
and we're here today to talk about relationship dynamics on this awesome program we're doing that does not have a name.
Still yet to be named. We're
So that's right.
researching, thinking about it. We're going to come up with a name that encompasses, embodies the work that we're doing together and individually and the work that we're hoping to put out in the world.
Yeah. So the Nameless Project is where we're at today. But we did at least realize that we want to start, honing in on practical things that we're experiencing in our work and break them down here, talk about them in this light that is a place to identify those lessons learned and also review some of the things that we talked about over the course of our weeks as we're talking to different clients in different contexts. Obviously, anything we share is totally bathed in confidentiality and anonymity. No details would be ever shared that can be compromising to a person's confidentiality. But the themes and changing the circumstances in ways that are relatable is totally applicable. So we're going to kind of dive in, and the idea that we came up with this week of thing that was most pronounced, as we talked about some of the sessions we engaged with, was the word resentment and how resentment can be such a negative impact on relationships, can be truly just a poison that destroys the integrity or connection of relationship. So resentment is the conversation of the day.
Yeah, I think when we were thinking about what we're going to talk about today, we just both were kind of ping-ponging back things that happened in real sessions this week with my clients, my one-on-one, and then Mark's one-on-one. And we realized that this is a theme that kind of emerged. So let's go ahead and talk about it because we have some real world examples and hope that there's some maybe nuggets of wisdom or tips or tools or things that we talk about that you could take back for your own relationship that might help you.
Yeah. And side note, hopefully our audio is all good. Randomly, of course, right as we're about to hit record, a massive street crew just showed up in our street in our front yard to tear up the road. There's a main water line breaking, so kind of as Murphy's Law would have it, we hit record and then cronk. So hopefully it's not picking up on the mic, and we're able to have a good conversation.
Awesome. Well, do you want to launch in, Mark, and talk about maybe the
Yeah,
couple you were working with this week a little bit and give kind of a
sure.
overview and assessment of what's
Perfect. Yeah,
going
yeah, yeah.
on?
So I had a very interesting situation with a couple that I've worked with for a long time. Dynamic couple, both professional, both kind of in young midlife, very well established, and very committed to doing their work. And so we've been working together for some time. Very committed to developing a relationship that is dynamic and honest and secure and intimate, and so a lot of good things. So as a result of that kind of work, there's an openness to looking underneath the surface. Why are there these repeated patterns of frustration, of fights, of irritants? And generically speaking, the situation was that together they attended an event that was pretty important. Had a connection with the wife's professional work, and so they're together. They're there, and they wanted to be kind of experiencing it together, and the husband wanted to be there and be supportive. And so it was great initiative, great motivation, great engagement. However, upon getting there and engaging with some folks and meeting some other people that were there, the husband said some of those kind of sarcastic, kind of humorous, but a little bit of like a dig, on his wife, and didn't feel very good for her. And she said, "Hey, that really hurt. Why would you do that? Like that's kind of embarrassing to me in this context. It's not a real super casual context where the idea of like a sarcastic joke or slight little dig would be an okay thing." And
Also, with couples that have been together a long time, like there's kind of no such thing as like a little dig. When you have a lot of history, it feels like even a little dig, unfortunately, feels calculated if you've been together that long because you're a little bit like, come on, you know me. Like, you know that hurts, or I don't like it when you do that. And so then the injury goes even deeper a little bit because it's not a casual joke when you're with someone you've been with for 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's good. Really well said. And then, sort of on exploration, the question like, well, why did that happen? Her saying, "Hey, that hurt me. Why'd you say it?" Him saying, "I don't know why I said it." It makes sense, like you're saying, Anna, like that it was known that she wouldn't have appreciated it. So kind of in unpacking, what we're discovering is even though there's this presentation of cooperation and desire for cooperation, there was some underlying irritation about needing to be at the thing or a burden that he was feeling to kind of be obligated to be at the event or obligated to show up or perform in a certain way. And really realizing that that underlying annoyance, energy, or resentment bubbled out in this little jab that really moved him to disconnect, moved him to, from a couple that can be intimate, connected, solid, each other's cheerleaders, actually showed up as a way of defaming or, de-edifying the person. And so this is very interesting tell. And it took a while to crack that nut because again, these high functioning and, bright folks were just like, why would that have either upset you so much? It was kind of a jab, a joke, but then why did I say it? Because I knew it wouldn't be a good idea. And so it's kind of this, unique exploration, and all the while, showing what we have on our face, forward, energy of like, hey, I want to be good, I want to be cool, I want to be supportive, but realizing that behind that or underneath the surface, there can often be sort of a, I kind of described it as like sort of like a bubbling cauldron that bubbles up and every once in a while spits out. And in this case, it was sort of this passive aggressive leak, from this bubbling cauldron of irritant, resentment, or buildup over the years.
So what did you share with them, babe? What were your tools or
Yeah,
techniques or
right.
admonitions or?
Well, first of all, as we open that conversation and kind of broaden it to say like, I'm wondering with other times, I help them dialogue conflict and work through conflict. I'm like, how many times do we have to go back to the fact that here's what was said or done, here's what was visible in the exchange, this sort of peripheral statement or action, but what was under the surface, and so really it was kind of a fun conversation here at the beginning of the year to say, hey, let's do it. 2026, let's really shine the light on what's underneath. And rather than have this sort of cloak of facade or a cloak of persona, let's identify what's underneath, what might be brewing that can move us to a higher level of irritant.
So did you feel like there was resentment on both sides or just one side in that instance?
That instance was an example of his annoyance and resentment coming out. We allowed it to open up in a larger conversation of saying, do you all have this dynamic that is 95% awesome, but there's just 5% of just little expressions of that underlying irritation. So whether it's, a lack of cooperation or a little jab or a little inconsideration or a little intentional, just avoidance in some way, all these things show up in these little ways. And then certainly when we're our worst selves and when they're their worst selves, they can show up in much bigger ways with a much bigger conflict or insult or, kind of assault to the relationship that's not helpful. So
Did you give them any like homework or takeaways or, hey, do this before we meet again?
Absolutely. So, and again, this was great because, I've got good rapport with them and longstanding history. I could kind of basically like call it out. Just like, no, stop. You both know that you're intelligent enough and have been doing the work of communication styles and conflict resolution styles long enough that you got to call it for what it is. And that is your immature self, your adolescent self, your hurtful self, your angry self, not your highest and best self. So the three kind of basic, I don't know, the tools that I want to help work through with my clients, with them, and in my life is, I call them 3 A's. So 3 A's are, first of all, an awareness, that we're aware. And so as soon as we do something like that, as soon as I get a little impatient with you, or, in this case, this person said this sort of like derogatory statement, I want us to quickly be aware of like, what's going on? What's going on? Like why did I just say that? Was I in a feeling of annoyance? Am I in a state of irritation or anger? Is there something going on? But self-awareness obviously is the first step in all levels of psychological growth. I'm aware of that. And so really want to turn up the awareness. That's very important that we turn up the awareness. I'm aware that I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling annoyed. I'm feeling irritated. I'm feeling taxed. Okay. So we start with the general awareness of what we are feeling in the moment. Number 2 is assessment. Go ahead and put on your assessor's hat and say, why am I feeling that way? Why am I in this mood of irritation or annoyance? Is it because I'm tired? It was a long flight? Is it because I'm annoyed to be here? Is it because I'm mad about something that happened last week? But I want you to do some analysis, some assessment of what is the
Is it because you're super selfish?
that never happens in this household. Let me just tell you right now. But yeah, so identify what is the thing, what's the feeling, what's the kind of motivation behind the feeling, and the third A is action. We get to decide what do I want to do with it, what action do I want to take, having had the awareness and the activation, and then now I take action. And in this case, case in point, because we dialogue that there might be some built up irritation about this obligatory event that they're a part of. So you all can take action. There's total ability for self-efficacy. You could say, I think, you know what? I need a break. I don't know that I can go on this particular event. Or I tell you what, I'm going to go on the event and I can be there for 2 hours, but I can't be there for 4 hours. Or, after we do it, I'm going to take some downtime to make sure that I don't let the resentment fester. So it could be any sort of activation work, practically like those things, or psychologically. I want to choose to be less selfish. I want to choose to be more giving. I want to choose to find ways I can be more, tangibly supportive, to my partner in this way. But all of that is the empowered piece that we can take action and activation from after we are aware of what we're feeling and understand and assess why it is we're feeling that way in the first place.
And do you feel like your clients left frustrated, neutral, willingness to dig in and look at the resentment?
Yeah. Yeah. No, through again, kudos to them. And the fact that there was a willingness to say there's a dynamic here that doesn't serve us well. And there was an ability to see how this instance played out that way, but how there's other examples of that. And because I've got a long history with them, I was able to kind of say, hey, this sounds akin to, A, B, and C, other times that we've had conversations like this. And so then again, using this idea of saying, here we are, 2026, let's draw a line in the sand and let's stop the idea of allowing or empowering this cauldron of irritation to come up. And so, being aware of it, what do I need to do to make sure I don't, let that ruin the day? And then are there some practical things to do, with my partner? And so again, this whole story works out great in the context of a couple that wants to work well together and is excited about growing personally and together. So it's an ideal scenario to quickly say, I want to own my part. A little tougher when couples have less sort of congeniality or shared goal of growth.
Or worst case scenario, the resentment is so deep, like the well of resentment is so deep that it's hard to even want to make any move towards the other person, either in the moment or at all. So
no, that's right. That's right. Well, yeah, which is a much tougher case that maybe we'll crack that nut with your illustration.
Okay.
Or not.
I had two different client situations this week where we were talking about resentment. The one is going to be a guy that is dating after divorce. We've been working together for a little over a year now, and he's dating a woman. They've been together 8 or 9 months, and there's a lot that he really likes about her. They get along well, they travel well together, they have a lot of fun together. They both like, the finer things in life and eating out and travel, like I said. But there have been a number of things that my client has kind of like brushed to the side at the beginning of the relationship, let's say the first, 2 to 6 months of relationship, that I think he sort of thought like, oh, that's not a big deal, or like, I can get over that, or, if that's really important to her, maybe I can let that go, while holding some boundaries on other things. So I am proud of him for there have been certain things that he has brought up to her and said, hey, like, I don't love this, or, when we have a disconnect, like, can we try to manage it like this? But essentially there was just a couple instances he shared in their relationship recently where he didn't speak up, where he felt like he was really being taxed by the relationship of she was asking too many things at once. Like he was cooking dinner and he was, fixing a light in the kitchen at his place. And then she asked him to make her a coffee. And like in that moment, he's just kind of like, oh my gosh, like I am doing everything. Like, can you do something? Like if I've got to stop and make your coffee, then can you fix the light or can you finish grilling the steaks or whatever? And so we just talked a lot in our session this week about how he's got to start voicing that, because now he's at the stage at this, 9-month mark of dating where You do not want the resentment to creep in because I think you would agree in your own life and your work, like it becomes like a poison. It's like this underlying poison underneath the foundation that will start to like crack it. It'll start to crack the foundation. And then, just like our street from our house this morning, what water started seeping up from this water main break. And it's like the poison of resentment, I think, will start to seep up from the foundation. And so I just was like, whoa, like pay attention, to my client this week, like pay attention. Like if you are starting to have moments where you are feeling annoyed and frustrated and you're not speaking up, you have to, because otherwise the resentment will creep in. And so it was just a really, thoughtful back and forth conversation around, okay, it's time to like speak up and say like, I don't like this dynamic, or if I'm doing all these things, like I also need you to be doing something because I don't want to be pissed and feel like I'm the one managing all the balls in the air and you're like not really contributing.
Yeah, no, good, good. Yeah, great illustration right here
I know,
from our street episode.
I know.
I sometimes, you coin the phrase kind of seeds of resentment. So with little irritants, it can just be a seed of resentment that, and again, to use a visual illustration, if you've ever seen like a tree growing up between, two pieces of concrete on a sidewalk. So a tiny little seed can fall in the crack of the sidewalk, no big deal. But over time, if it becomes a fully grown resentment tree, it'll push those big slabs of concrete away from each other. And then
Yeah.
ultimately there's kind of permanent, placement or displacement of our desire to be close to the person because we have this massive, tree of resentment that's grown up between us.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I do just sitting here talking, I am reminded of, I mean, he's a little bit like when you look at the graphs of a new dating relationship and like the spikes in dopamine, it levels off somewhere starting around like 8 or 9 months and then like a year really like plummets. So I do wonder too if he's like, experiencing the dopamine drop off, or where some of the things and dynamics that are happening between the two of them for many months, he was like, oh, that's okay. Like, the dopamine rush, the excitement of the newness of the love and attraction and relationship was able to just override any potential resentment. And now it's like, if it's leveling off in his brain, all the feel good chemicals, that he's starting to be like, oh, yeah, like I don't love when this happens, or I don't love when she says that or does this. And so it's interesting for us to kind of dig in now and really take a hard look at that and give him the words and tools to be able to address it before it gets too big. And of course, in this example, they're dating, so like it's also with he and I, it's a conversation of
Sure.
like what's a deal breaker, what's not. So it's very different to be dealing with the starting of resentment in a dating relationship versus a marriage, because obviously in dating you can assess it more with a like, hey, is this worth it? Like, should we, maybe this isn't right if there's too many things.
Yeah, no, no, that's great. That's great. And that's a great, for that stage of the relationship, for you to help, your clients who are in the dating stage to say, how do I delineate, hey, this is something that I, could live with and find a way to manage my irritation about it versus like that's a deal breaker and a non-negotiable and
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah. And then the second one, I had example talking about resentment with a client this week, is actually a married woman and she wants to stay married. She feels a bit alone in her marriage, where she feels like she wants to really grow and deepen the relationship. They've been married for many years. And she feels like her husband is not as open to learning new skills and techniques, and for him to get better relationally, to increase the marriage depth and like attention to her and what her needs are. And she feels like she's at kind of a breaking point where she wants to essentially stop trying to like get him to change or pay attention or do this thing or do that thing. And so this week she came to our session and was just kind of like, yeah, I think I'm like kind of done trying, like getting him to care. Like I'm just exhausted. I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall and I'm just kind of done. And I said, so what does that mean? And she was like, well, I think it means probably less communication on my part. Like I'll just stop saying like when he doesn't open my door, or he doesn't do this thing, or he pops off and yells, I'm just gonna stop like saying anything. And I said, huh, okay. Well, that's fine. This is a, new direction that you're going in terms of your relationship and the way that you're viewing it and the way you want to operate within it. However, you're giving yourself a big task of spiritual up leveling to not resent him then. If you are truly saying, I am going to say right now that I don't think my husband's changing. I don't think he like actually cares to change. And so some of these things that she really are displeasing to her in their marriage, she's going to have to release and let go. and not just like suffer in silence and become resentful towards him when these things keep happening. If she's going to stop calling him out and stop saying like, hey, like, do you see when you did that? Or like, that hurt my feelings. Like, she's just going to stop. So I told her, like, in my mind, I was kind of seeing her as like she's had this lasso that she's been trying to like lasso him into like pulling him in and changing this behavior and editing this and editing that and doing all these things. It's like she's kind of dropping the lasso, like not trying to rein him in. And now I told her she needs to pick up some rose-colored glasses and she's got to put on some, see him through a positive lens because I do think this is actually going to be quite challenging for her to give up the lasso of trying to like get him to change, please level up, please be different. And now letting that lasso go because if she doesn't put on rose-colored glasses, there's almost no way the resentment doesn't start to just like eat at her and again like under become like this poison underneath the foundation of the relationship that will eventually crack and seep up because um she's not happy with the way he acts and operates. And so if she's giving up trying to change or trying to ask him to change, then I told her she needs to have the rose-colored glasses to scan for the positive. Like if she's going to give up, okay, I can't change him. I'm the only person I can control. I said, in order for her to not, go crazy and just feel sad and resentful all the time, I said, you are going to have to start to scan for the positive with him and have these rose-colored glasses and really make an effort to notice the good things about him and the things that are wonderful. And like you are going to have to anchor into those really and truly so that when the thing happens that you don't like, the thing that is displeasing or this thing happens, you have a foundation of gratitude and you're like, okay, well, I really love this about him, or I really love this. I love this part of our life, and he's provided that, or whatever it is. Because otherwise, if she doesn't have a really nice gratitude practice, rose-colored glasses, scanning for the positive, a positive sentiment override, as the Gottmans would say, if she doesn't have that towards him, like this experiment is going to fail.
Yeah, yeah, that's really key using that word experiment. I want to make sure that you communicated or that I communicated to him that for this season. So let's try it. She's tried that. She's tried bugging him. Hey, do the thing. How come you don't do the thing? I'm frustrated. And remember too, that's a bigger conversation about expectations and resentment. And so, when we have expectations of someone, it's most important that we communicate those expectations, that we get buy-in on those expectations. One of the biggest challenges in relationship are unspoken expectations. Like, hey, I'm just hurt you're not doing this or that. Well, have you conveyed it? So if you conveyed the expectation, it's a realistic expectation and it's not being met, it's understandable that you're disappointed. And so I like that idea of like, okay, can you do a season of rose-colored glasses to say, how can you anchor in positive and good? But also I want tons of communication for these guys. I want them to be able to say like, hey, I'm done asking. I've asked, so much. You're obviously not interested in doing it. That bums me out, but I'm going to try to release my expectation that you do those things. So I just maybe suggest a little more cranking up, the communication, and so that yeah, at least they're on the same page of like realizing this is a season of her seeing if she can live without those expectations being met.
Yeah.
But yeah, sounds like fascinating work. I love it.
Well, thanks for listening in. We hope something might be helpful for you in our three examples of our
Yeah.
real world work this week of dealing with people, trying to help them notice, as Mark said, be aware, and then action on, helping resentment not to build, not to seep in or creep in into your relationships. If you have any questions, like feel free to reach out. If you're experiencing resentment or you feel it's starting to creep up in your own relationship or marriage, like we'd be happy to help you. So reach out, leave in the comments if there's anything you've done that's been helpful and resentment, fighting resentment in your own marriage or relationship.
Right on. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for checking us out. We'll see you next time.